Welcome back to Off, Over 50 and Fired, Now What with Linda
and Shelley.
We just finished our very long and intense series on branding, but I hope that you got quite a bit out of it because there's a lot on branding, right, Shelley?
Yes, there was a lot of work and a lot of good information. So yay to that.
Yay to that. All right.
Right, but as usual, before we begin, we want to give our wine selection for the evening. It's a nice Pinot Noir that we had over drinks with one of our listeners, Harry P., who is also a past colleague. It's called Contour. It's a really nice blend from the central coast of California. It's from Monterey and a little bit from Sonoma and a little bit from Napa Valley. Very yummy.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Now, this episode is in offshoots, and we're going to focus on stories from our listeners showcasing their experiences from either the first day that they were notified that they were either restructured, let go, whatever you want to call it, or the last day they were actually at work.
Right, and as we already told you our stories, I couldn't wait to leave, but Linda had a really hard time leaving.
Well, I was really going to miss the people, Shelley. You know that. I grew up there. I was there for over 20 years, so it was a special place for me.
Yeah, I know. I know it was hard, but after 3 times of going back to your office, we finally pulled you away.
You did. Thank you for shoving me out the door.
And we did do that. Okay, so let's start with our story from Janet. Janet's story about hearing the news and also the aftermath. And here's what Janet wrote into us. She said, Shelley and Linda, I wanted to say that I truly enjoy your weekly Off Now What podcasts. I have a similar story. My position was eliminated at the end of last year due to financial issues from the company. I received the call while I was on vacation. I can't freaking believe that.
Yeah, it's tough when you're on vacation. You're not expecting something like that at all.
I know. It's like the last thing you want to hear, right? So while the 2 individuals were explaining why my position was being eliminated after 15 years of service, all I could think of was over and over again, I'm over 50. Who is going to hire someone my age? My God, I have to start all over again. Where do I start?
So she continues to say, how do I update my resume? That hasn't been updated in 15 years. Mine was 20 years. Remember that, Shelley?
Yeah, thank God mine was only 6.
All these questions and more were popping out of my mind when I was listening to these 2 individuals telling me that I no longer had a job. Janet goes on. I worked very hard for the departments. I went above and beyond for them. I considered myself a very hardworking and diligent individual. I've always received compliments on my work performances. Now they're telling me that my services were no longer needed. So we're hoping, as Janet goes through, that our podcasts are helping people like Janet and others to answer those questions and those concerns. Shelley, what else did Janet have to say?
She said that, after the phone call, she said, I called my husband. I told him that I lost my job. In a very low voice, my husband said, you know what we need to do?
What? What did Janet say? Her husband say?
I said, no, what? He replied, we need to talk to Pinot Grigio. Pinot Grigio is my favorite white wine. I laughed so hard that I had forgotten about the phone call. Well, needless to say, we did have a chat with Pinot Grigio. It was great. And for us, it's wine too. Linda and I really enjoy it, but for everyone, you should use whatever it helps that helps relieve your stress level.
That's right, Shelley. You got to find those things that are going to relieve those thoughts and something to really let go and find some way to have some fun and kind of take your mind off of it.
Yep.
So Janet goes on, it was difficult for me to go back to work after my vacation. However, I knew that I was not going to give them the satisfaction of seeing me sad and hurt. So I meditated and I went to work on Monday with a smile on my face. It was business as usual. And that's what we've talked about, Shelley, right? To keep it professional, keep the emotions out of it, and just show that you're a hard worker and you're going to go out in a graceful way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's hard. It's really hard to do that, but you always, to your point, you want to keep it professional. And she goes on to say, it's funny though, when people knew that your position was being eliminated, you get treated like you had a disease. And I had mentioned, way back in the beginning, I felt like I had the cooties and it was going to rub off on people. And Jenna continues to say, people look at you funny, they stop socializing with you, and you get these pity looks. Who the freak want pity looks, But you get them, and she's so right. When a few individuals came by to tell me how sorry they were to hear that my position was eliminated, I told them with a smile on my face, it's okay. 2018 is a new beginning for me. And as we always say,
Yep.
when one door closes, a better one opens.
Right. So Janet goes on to finish off. I'm determined to enhance my current skills, whether it's taking computer classes, enrolling in resume and mock interviews, workshops, networking, etc. Also, not worrying about my age while looking for a position is extremely important. The more I worry about my age, the more I give into fear. For me, fear means face everything and rise. This is my mantra. You go, Janet. And if it means changing what fear means to you, you should do it. Don't let your age keep you down.
That's right. Just because you're over 50 doesn't mean you can't contribute to the world, because you know you can.
Because you have a lot of experience to give others. You
Yeah.
got to remember that. We've talked about that.
Yeah, and it's really hard. I mean, because you're in that spot right now where you feel very vulnerable and you feel like, okay, but you know what? You do have a lot to offer. So we're on to our second story. It's from Vinny W. It's all about his last day in the office. Here is what Vinny W. wrote us. Hi, Shelley and Linda. I just had breakfast with episode 5. It had been very comforting to me to hear your podcast. Very self-healing. So thank you for sharing your journey.
So Vinny W. goes on to say, here's my tale of my last day. My last day was in mid-December. The place was a ghost town. I submitted my paperwork and laptop to my HR generalist. Upon receiving my retirement badge, I noticed my name misspelled. Can you believe that? No.
What a joke.
I know.
What a joke.
Even on your last day, they just can't get it right.
Nope.
So he goes on to say, I debated whether to let it go or have it corrected. I decided at least I deserved my correct name on my badge. This was a retiree badge, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
He was going to have it for a long time.
Okay.
I did not want to be known as Vinny Worker versus Vinny Walker. Nope.
Yeah, really, worker? Not your worker, you just fucking fired me.
So he goes on to say, I sat alone in my office in an empty, barren office with no laptop for 30 to 45 minutes. It was the most lonely moment that I can recall in my life. It was just awful.
And we know how we all felt on that very last day. The last thing you want to be doing is stuck someplace in your office, an empty fucking office, with nothing around, waiting for somebody to fix your right name.
That's right. So upon receipt of my updated badge, he goes on to say, I left the building, walked to the garage, and silently left the grounds. A difficult day. Absolutely, that was a very hard day. But you have to figure out how to shake it off and move on.
Yep, Vinny W. survived it, and he bounced back. Thanks, Vinny W., for your sharing.
Right, so for our next story, it's about being in employment limbo. So our story is from Hemel, and she wrote us, Linda, Shelley, a mutual colleague forwarded me the link to your podcast. So this morning, I back-to-back listened to 5 episodes. It's such a great start. She goes on to say, I never properly exited from my company and only now realize the importance of doing it. If I only had heard this podcast before.
So our friend Hemel actually ended up in employment purgatory.
That's right. And what does that mean for Hemel? Well, she was actually never officially terminated from the company. And she was terminated, but she had nothing from HR, nothing official, no handover letter of any sort. And she ended up having issues not having that official termination date. And you'd think that it really wouldn't cause any issues, but if you have benefits that extend beyond the employment period, it can affect them.
So Linda, what kind of things did it affect?
Well, Shelley, in her case, it affected some financial investment benefits. She couldn't verify her identity because she didn't have the official termination date. Therefore, she couldn't access those funds. She tried emailing HR, Info Center, and had zero response. She even tried a number of outsourced services, and they couldn't help her either. So here's the lesson learned from Hemel. Before you leave, make sure you have a formal document that has your termination date and all its terms.
Yeah, and just, all about the old HR stuff, just kind of reiterate the fact that once you're gone, when they let you go, they don't give two shits about you anymore. It's really hard to get somebody to pay attention to you. And when everybody used to use the term, instead of human resources, useless resources, Well, that's really when it comes into play around this time, because it gets to be difficult.
That's right.
And you never know. You really may need to refer back to this stuff, for, any types of verification for past employment.
So we have one more story. And this story is actually from a conversation that we had with one of our listeners, Harry P., who we had the wine with earlier today, who had the unfortunate experience of being told while traveling. And not just traveling, he was traveling abroad. So Shelley, tell us what happened to Harry P.
I'll tell you. Poor Harry. The company was determined to notify Harry P. at the same time that everybody else in the company was finding out. He actually got the call after he had just landed and was on his way to his hotel, and he was a freaking bazillion miles away.
And remember, this was late at night because of the time zone difference.
That's
so
right.
It's extremely
late at night, way, way, way far away. And what kind of way to find out when you're that far away and you're not even close to family and friends to have comfort you?
So, I hope that you find some of these stories relatable, and it really provides you some comfort that you're not alone in this, that other people are experiencing difficulties and hearing about the news, and then, stories of trying to leave a company where you felt that you were contributing and enjoying.
So, please keep your stories coming in, and who knows, your story may be on our next podcast.
That's right, Shelley. So, as always, you can submit your stories, feedback, and suggestions by going to our website, www.over50andfire.com, and click on Contact Us, or you can post to our blog. Don't forget about our OFF Toolkit, which has all the links and resources referred to in our episodes. So, thanks for listening. Bye!